we plan on, actually, before we make this commitment, can I just ask real quick? The career fair, right? Pierce, you had the date on it. It's after ISTS, right? It's the Wednesday after?
Wednesday after ISTS.
Yes. We will be hosting some sort of resume/mock interview session like we did in the fall.
If you want, you can just contact at least me. I don't know about other people, but just send me your resume if you want a mock interview. I can just set up a time with you. Of course, not over ISTS weekend, but if you want Monday or this weekend, just send me your resume saying, hey, I'd love to have a mock interview with you. I'd be willing to.
Hell yeah. So, yes. It'll probably be that week, though. It will be either Monday or Tuesday of that week because of the aforementioned competition. You all set?
Yeah.
Yeah, so up next, we have Senor Nick McKenna. You might know him from his brother. His name is Nick. He's Jack's little brother, who's not so little.
Oh.
He's Nick McKenna. And he's presenting on, the title of the talk is
It has a title?
Intro to 51% Tax.
Whoa.
That's the title. So without further ado,
Well, there's a little bit further to do. I gotta plug this in.
so almost, all right, I'm gonna ad lib. So how's everyone doing? Yeah, doing all right, hanging in there. Everyone having a good week so far? Are we streaming?
A little bit.
Alright.
Okay, cool.
Later.
Wait, no, keep ad-libbing. One second.
So anything else? Any other questions? I can tell you that I did not, this is the attire thing. Attire is a hot button issue. That's why attire was kind of.
Give your hot take.
My hot take is the one that Russell was trying to devil's advocate for. Yeah, I've worn t-shirt and shorts.
That's a flex.
Okay, I'm ready.
That's a flex.
But it's my thought process on it is the same thing you do. Okay, it's like I don't want to work anywhere that doesn't.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Okay, wait. This is. Hold up. Am I mic'd? Can you? Okay.
Oh,
yes.
no. We got
No. Oh, this is beautiful. Okay, good. I've wanted some mobility for this.
That means you gotta be on a swivel.
I'm on a switch.
I'm gonna make you work. All right, can I be heard? Are we good? Are we?
You all set?
Okay. Okay, cool. So today I'm going to talk about 51% tax. Just to get like a feel for it. Raise your hand if you know a little bit about how Bitcoin works. Okay. Raise your hand if you've heard of 51% of tax. Okay, cool. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how Bitcoin works, but not too much, and then I'm going to talk about what 51% of tax are. So Bitcoin, it's a decentralized currency. It runs on cryptography. Every 10 minutes, basically a big puzzle is solved. The puzzle uses hashing. Basically, everyone's told, okay, there's going to be a number between this and this range. This is its hash. Find the number. And also confirm every transaction that's happened in the last 10 minutes. And they call that a block. So you go through and you confirm every transaction cryptographically. I'm not going to get into how that works. But you solve the puzzle, you find the hash, or you find what resolves to the hash. And then you tell everyone about it and you say, okay, I found this block, and then you get right now, the block reward changes, but right now you get like 12.5 Bitcoin if you do that. So you also get to dictate what transactions exist on the network. So, and it's talked about in the Bitcoin white paper. The white paper was published by the person or people who made Bitcoin, and it's saying, okay, this is how it works. This is the idea, like kind of the RFC for Bitcoin, sort of. So, and they sort of lay out why 51% attacks work in it. So they say, so basically they say miners vote with their CPU power, expressing their acceptance of valid blocks and working to extend the chain of blocks and rejecting invalid blocks. And basically there's one CPU, one vote. So the amount of computation you can do is directly correlated with your ability to decide what is a valid transaction and sort of what blocks are included. So if you mine the newest block, it's added on to the chain. And then if you have the newest block, it also has to be the most difficult block. So it has to basically, the difference, like the search space for the hash that you're trying to find it becomes larger gradually as more people are mining and as there's more mining power in total. So what this results in is if you have the majority of the mining power, you can say, okay, this is the newest block. And if you can say this is the newest block, you can invalidate old transactions. And that gets a little bit tricky. So first, let's look at, this is the Bitcoin hash rate. It changes all the time, but right now it's at, however many thousand petahash per second. So there's a lot. It'd be very, very, very hard to get that much hashing power by yourself. You really couldn't do it yourself. But then there are smaller coins where you sort of could do that. So for example, Bitcoin private. It would cost, in CPUs, it would probably cost only a couple $1 million to buy enough, enough CPUs or GPUs to do that. And generally, that's sort of a problem if you want to try to attack something. Actually, I should go back to here and talk about how you actually would attack it. So because of this consensus mechanism, if you can mine the newest block consistently, you can say, OK, this transaction never happened, and replace it with a new one. Because everyone will trust what you say if you are able to mine the newest block. And if you can do it consistently, you can invalidate an old transaction. And that results in the ability to do something called a double spend. So double spend means that you have a transaction. So say you have like an exchange. So say, I don't know, just like I own an exchange, and an attacker wants to defraud the exchange. They would send some small altcoin that has a very small hashing power, or a very low hash rate. They would send money to that exchange, and then they would say exchange whatever coin. Let's say it's like Dogecoin. They would exchange their Dogecoin for Bitcoin, withdraw it from the exchange. And then they would submit a new block to the network. They would have to mine a new block, and they would submit it, tell everyone about it, and they'd say in that block, that transaction actually never happened because this transaction happened instead. And because it's the longest block, and it's the consensus mechanism, it would replace that block. So or not that block. It would replace that transaction with your new transaction. So let's talk about the economics of that, because I think that that's actually far more interesting than the technical side of it. So as I said, with Bitcoin, it'd be almost impossible to 51% attack something like Bitcoin, just because there's so many people mining it. It uses as much electricity as like all of Ireland. Like you just don't have access to that sort of power yourself. You won't do it. But there are smaller currencies. There's thousands and thousands of small altcoins. So if we look like here, you can see there are tons and tons and tons. Oh, nope, I guess we don't have internet. We can't look there. But there are tons of altcoins. Many of them, not a lot of people mine. And so it's pretty easy to get a majority of the hashing power. So something like Bitcoin private, which I attacked like, I don't know when, a while ago, it's fairly easy to attack. And thanks to the creation of something like NiceHash. NiceHash lets you rent hashing power. So you can basically just pay someone and say, OK, I want to borrow however much hashing power, which fundamentally changes the economics of doing a 51% attack. Because before, if you wanted to do that, you'd have to buy thousands of GPUs. You'd have to create your own farm of servers. You'd have to have racks for it. It would be very expensive. But if you can just rent it from someone and pay $3,000 for an hour, that changes things sort of fundamentally. And so if you look at NiceHash, there's lots of, these are all mining rigs that you could rent from. And these are the cost per terahash per day, which is a great deal of hashing power. So, and someone decided, oh, we should make an app that shows how hard it would be to attack a given currency. So someone made Crypto51.app. And what this shows you is it shows you, OK, right here we have what the currency is, the market cap of the currency. Though the market cap of a given cryptocurrency is sort of misleading, because with Bitcoin, probably half the coins are probably lost or haven't ever moved. So it's really hard to know what something's market cap actually is. But as you can see right here, and right here is how much hashing power you could rent from this website in order to do a 51% attack. And for a lot of them that are actually pretty large, you could rent all the hashing power. It'd be fairly easy to do. And as such, people do it pretty often. You'll see probably every, 4 or 5 months, you'll see someone 51% attacks some small cryptocurrency, and they make $300,000 or $400,000 before all the exchanges shut that down. But what I think is fairly interesting about it is the idea that for larger cryptocurrencies, so say something like Litecoin, its hashing power is in large part controlled by like 4 or 5 different parties. So if you imagine an attacker stands to make like, I don't know, say like $1 million off attacking something like that, it'd be fairly easy to just DDoS those 4 or 5 pools, just take them offline for a few hours. So that also changes it. And then another thing that changes the economics of it is the idea of margin trading. So wait, who knows what margin trading is? Okay, so margin trading is basically where you can make trades. Usually you do it with stocks. You can make trades with money that you don't have. Basically, you borrow it from the exchange. So with margin trading, and you can oftentimes with Bitcoin exchanges that offer margin trading, you can have like 3 times leverage. So basically, you could borrow money and then you could leverage it 3 times. So you could probably bet with maybe like 6 times the amount of money that you actually have. And you could bet that a cryptocurrency will go up or will go down. And that brings us to the next, sort of the setup for the next issue with someone actually doing a 51% attack, is that it's kind of a pain in the ass to actually defraud an exchange because so many of these small currencies, so like the ones over here, the ones over there, like you've never heard of any of these because they're just shitty. Like you've never heard of Ravencoin, or maybe you have, no offense. But they're kind of shitty, they're really small, no one really trades them. So if you look at the order books for something like that, you won't see a lot. So this is like a fairly sizable coin, like this is Vertcoin, which is somewhat small, but pretty sizable. So if you look at this, these are all the buy orders for it. So you can see right here, someone wants to buy like 67 Vertcoin for however much. And right here it shows the sum total of how much Bitcoin you would spend to buy this much. So as you go down, you can see like if you were to buy 1.6 Bitcoin worth of Vertcoin, you drop the price a fair bit, like starting up here at that amount. You drop the price a fair bit. And that's especially true with smaller currencies. So usually when someone does a 51% attack, because the coins are so small, they'll usually drop the price of that currency just because they have to sell so much of it by probably like half or something. They then also have to buy up a lot of that currency. So they cause massive price fluctuations, which causes themselves a bit of an issue because it's expensive for them to buy all of it because no one's selling it. And then it's costly for them to sell all of it because no one's buying it. But margin trading flips that on its head because if you can change the price of something and you can bet with 6 times the amount of money that you have, then it doesn't matter that you're losing money because you could just bet against it and you could be making money. So and this is sort of a newer thing, and I haven't, most of the 51% attacks have happened before the proliferation of margin trading. But I think it's a fairly substantial risk that people would use margin trading to their advantage. So you could imagine someone buying up all the currency, all of a currency, and they would have a leveraged bet on that currency's price going up because they will inevitably spike the price when they buy all of it. Then they could have a leveraged short position on that, which is betting its price will go down, and they can make 6 times the amount of money on it, inevitably crashing when 1, they sell all of it, and 2, everyone freaks out and sells it because it's being attacked. So I think that is an interesting sort of economic tangent of it. What else was there? Are there any questions about this? What's up?
Are there any automated attempts to detect 51% attacks by
Oh yeah. So that actually has me started on the second sort of side of this, which I'll get into probably after this. So there are some people who've tried to make software to detect these. So I think it was BATA. I don't know how you pronounce the name, but their symbol, their tag is like BATA. I don't know what it stands for. But they made this thing that they call like a firewall, which detects if someone is sending a bunch of information to the network, but not requesting a lot of information from the network. Because when you, so I should also talk about pragmatically in real life how you actually do the attack. So what you do is you have basically 2 instances of the same wallet that have the same money in it. And then you have one of them go offline. So it doesn't know about any of the other transactions that are happening. And then once it's offline, you start mining with a lot of hashing power, more than the rest of the network has. So you start mining, it starts mining blocks, it has a longer blockchain. Then online on the actual network, you would send your money to the exchange or whatever. Then the exchange receives it, you turn it into something else, you withdraw it. You have your money back. Then once you're ready to undo the transaction, you take the one that you were mining on, the server that you were mining on, or the wallet rather. The wallet that you were mining on, you take it online, and then you basically tell the world about like a lot of time has probably passed. You've probably mined 30 blocks or so by this point. So then you have to tell the world like, hey, I have these 30 new blocks. You should all check them out. They're really cool. But that requires you to tell the network about 30 blocks, which is a fair bit of bandwidth. So they made this thing that they call a firewall that will look, is someone telling us about a bunch of blocks without, and they're not syncing the blockchain, they're just telling us about a bunch of blocks. And so if they see that, then they'll say, okay, well, something weird is happening here, so we're going to warn everyone, and we're going to we're going to ban this person from telling us about anything. So that's one thing that they've done. I don't think that that's been tested, but it seems a fairly interesting solution to it. So yes, people have done that. Another thing that people do is something called proof of stake, which is where instead of having who decides what the longest block is be determined by hashing power, by CPU power, they have it determined by who has the most of a given coin, who owns the most of it. Because if you're the biggest holder of a currency, you'd cause a lot of damage to it if you 51% attacked it. So they figure, okay, just whoever has the most of that currency has a vested interest in that not happening, so they probably won't do it. So proof of stake is one way that people avoid it. Then another thing that people do is something called delayed proof of work, which is where they write checkpoints every I think every Bitcoin block. So every 10 minutes. They write to the Bitcoin blockchain, which, as I said, has a massive amount of hashing power going into it. And so it'd be very, very, very hard to 51% attack Bitcoin. So all these smaller coins don't have that same protection, but they can use Bitcoin to still have a decentralized mechanism of protection, because they can write to the Bitcoin blockchain like, hey, this is Vertcoin or whatever, and this is our checkpoint. So they can hash all the blocks that have existed before. They can say, okay, if all the blocks before this block don't hash to this, then don't accept a blockchain like that. And so they can make it where you only have a window of about 10 minutes where you can do a double spend attack. And that won't usually work, because most exchanges will make you wait like an hour before you can actually use money that you deposit. So that's another way that people prevent 51% attacks that I think is probably the best solution. Any other questions? Awesome. Alrighty. Well, thank you.